The number of uniform spherical beads, B, that can be produced from a given mass of lead varies inversely as the cube of the radius R of the beads required. When the radius is 1.2 millimeters, the number of beads produced is 2,500. Calculate the radius of the beads when 1,280 are produced from the same mass. And so notice that it says that the number of uniform spherical beads, B, that can be produced from a given mass of lead varies inversely. So B, right? So B varies inversely as the cube of the radius R of the beads required. And so what that basically is saying is that B is inversely proportional to R cube or radius cube. So that's how we write it. That's how we express that. So we write it in symbolic form that B is inversely proportional to R cubed. And so that's how we write that statement, right? But if we say that B is inversely proportional to the radius cube, what does that mean? Well, that means that there exists a constant K such that B is equal to K all over R cubed. That's what it means for B to be inversely proportional to R cubed. And so we have this equation and our goal is to figure out what K is. What is this constant? What is the value of this constant? But what do we know so far? We know what B is, right? It says that B, the number of beads produced is 2,500 and the radius R is 1.2. And so we substitute. For B, we write 2,500 and for R, we write 1.2. And so we have 2,500 is equal to K all over 1.2 raised to the power of 3. And so we say 1.2 cubed or 1.2 raised to the power of 3. That's 1.2 times 1.2 times 1.2. That gives us 1.728. And so we have K all over 1.728. We take 2,500 and we express it as a fraction by putting it over 1. Next, we cross multiply. So we have K times 1 or 1 times K. Well, that's simply equal to K. And we have 1.728 multiplied by 2,500. And that's what we have here. We have to multiply these two. And when we multiply these two, when we multiply 2,500 by 1.728, we get 4,320. And so that's what K is. K is equal to 4,320. Okay, now that we know what K is, let's calculate the radius, right? Let's figure what the radius of the beads is going to be when 1,280 are produced from the same mass, all right? So what do we know? We know that K is equal to 4,320, right? We know that the number of beads or the amount of beads is going to be 1,280, all right? And so what we're going to do is we are going to use the same equation right here. And we're using the same equation because we know that B is inversely proportional to the radius cube. And so we're using this formula because of that information, that B is equal to, that B is inversely proportional to the radius cube. And that's what this equation tells us, right? So if B is inversely proportional to the radius cube, that means that, so if B is inversely proportional to the radius cube, that means that there exists a K such that B is equal to K all over R cubed. And we found out what that K is in this case. K is equal to 4,320. And so we substitute that. So we have that K is equal to 4,320 all over R cubed. We don't know what R is. We're trying to figure out what R is. But we know what B is. B is equal to 1,280. So we substitute that and we put it over 1. And so we cross multiply. We have that R cubed is multiplied by 1,280. And we have that 1 is multiplied by 4,320. When we cross multiply, we have that 1,280 multiplied by R cubed is equal to 4,320. Next, we divide both sides of this equation by 1,280. We cancel this with that, and so we get that R cubed is equal to 4,320 divided by 1,280. Next, when we divide these two, so we have 4,320 divided by 1,280 is going to be 3.375. Next, we take the cube root of both sides of this equation. We take the cube root of both sides. And so we have the cube root of r cubed, and we have the cube root of 3.375. We cancel out this with that, and so we are left with r is equal to the cube root of 3.375 and the cube root of 3.375. Yes, the cube root of 3.375 is 1.5. And so that means that r is equal to 1.5. And so what does that mean? That means that the radius of the beads, when 1,280 beads are produced from the same mass, is going to be 1.5 millimeters, 1.5 mm. And that's the answer to this particular question.